Lisa's fate is catching up with her, and she is likely going to die soon. With Inazuma coming to an end and Sumeru approaching, it made me think of which characters are likely going to come up or have importance in its story, and Lisa was one of those characters. Her knowledge and background with the Sumeru Academia will be of great use in the storyline. Along with the fact that she's literally running out of time, I'm predicting that she'll either die in between or at the end of our journey to the Land of Wisdom. Before I explain why I've come to this conclusion, let me give some background information to Lisa as a character. Lisa's full name is Lisa Minchi, and while her first and last name do have origin meanings, they don't carry any significant meaning to her lore, as they're simply just puns off of Mona Lisa and changing Vinci in Da Vinci to Minchi. Lisa is a mage with a carefree personality who attended Sumeru Academia and became recognized as the most distinguished graduate in the past 2 centuries. However, she abruptly halted her studies to eventually become the librarian of the Knights of Favonius that we now know. Her reason for abrupting her studies was deemed unknown, but there are key events revealed to us that may paint a clear picture as to why she stopped pursuing academia. Lisa's character story 5, which is obtained at friendship level 6, how she got her vision, and her constellation not only reveals her reason as to why she left academia, but is also why she's at risk of dying soon. In this character story, her experience in Sumeru is described as such. Having personally witnessed raving mad scholars in the forests of Sumeru and powerful sages sitting underutilized on adversary councils, Lisa realized what uninhibited erudition can really do to a person. It seems such a high price to pay. How much did one have to sacrifice to attain the profoundest knowledge of all? Put off by this realization, Lisa decided to leave Sumeru. Since then, Lisa has always stopped short of taking things too seriously. Before demanding too many miracles from the gods, first consider if you are willing to pay the price they ask. These words she has spoken to just 3 people since arriving in Mondstadt. In each case, it was because she knew it was what they needed to hear. Now, who the people Lisa has spoken these words to is a conversation we could save for a later date. Everything else about this story description, however, is very important to her reason for leaving. Many of the scholars at Sumeru Academia fell victim to having a strong thirst for knowledge. While wanting to gain wisdom isn't an inherently bad thing, the lengths people may go to in order to obtain such knowledge can range from safe and innocent at best to life or even world-threatening at worst. What I'm getting at here is that it is possible that this quote-unquote uninhibited erudition that is mentioned may hint at the fact that these raving mad scholars use ethically unjust methods of experimentation or practices in order to further their research. Of course, I'm specifically talking about things such as human experimentation or creating entities. We see this in the Genshin manga with the character Kole, who was injected with Archon residue by Barnabas, who had collisions with Fatui Harbinger Dottore. Perhaps to Lisa, sacrificing one's own sense of morality and ethics for the sake of wisdom wasn't a path she wanted to take, thus leading her to abandon academia altogether, and to become the carefree librarian that we now know. We know that visions are given to those recognized by the gods. In Lisa's case, her vision came when she was simply thinking of how she could pursue her research further. Obtaining her vision gave her the ability to gain the knowledge that she wanted to pursue, but she soon realized that something was off. Something wasn't right about the secrets behind this knowledge. For whatever reason, the gods gave humans the key to changing everything, but they did not explain the cost involved. Lisa grew fearful of the truth. Now, isn't it strange how when people gain their visions, they're never told what the cost might be for obtaining such a powerful tool? Sure, things like having responsibility and making sure to use its power appropriately are things to look out for by nature, But what about things that aren't as explicit? What if gaining such power could cost someone else's life, or mayhaps even your own? When Lisa was first designed, product manager Jason Chung discussed in March of 2020 what her original lore was going to be. He states, "She touched a magic book when she was young that gave her most of her powers, but it cut her life by half. So she only has a few years left to live. It creates a very carefree personality of someone that just wants to live life. Her lore now is not as explicit in terms of how long she has to live, but we can still make inferences based on her character story description, which we went over in the last section, as well as her constellation." Lisa's constellation is called Tempus Fugit, a Latin phrase which is commonly translated as "time flies." The phrase comes from a line in Book 3 of Virgil's poem Georgics. While his poem was a very descriptive and didactic one about agriculture, it conflicted with its purpose, which wasn't to teach, but rather to delight readers and inspire hope in restoring traditional agricultural life in Italy. For context, this poem was written somewhere between 37 and 30 BCE, which was around the time of Italy's Third Civil War between Octavian, better known as Augustus, and Mark Antony. This civil war, along with the two wars prior, resulted in the depopulation of rural Italy. Keep in mind that Virgil was a countryman himself, which would have further given him more inspiration to write this poem. Back to Lisa. Her constellation is visualized by an hourglass, which is described as an hourglass which marks the end of the workday for Lisa. Its sand moves fast. This description can be taken in a literal sense, but it can also be interpreted more generally to her remaining lifespan. Mona gives a straightforward synopsis of Lisa's fate based on her constellation. She begins,
"A Tempus Fugit. The constellation derives its name from the hourglass and stands for knowledge and time, or rather, the trade-off between them. As each grain of sand falls down, a moment of time, of life even, dies for good. To stop the unrelenting flow of sand, one would have to turn the hourglass on its side. But once the sand comes to rest, it remains motionless forever." Maybe becomes lazy is more accurate than comes to rest in this case.
And with this, it's safe to say that Lisa's carefree personality may stem from her fear of this trade-off. For her, the price of obtaining some of the deepest and darkest wisdom about magic was likely her own lifespan, with the hourglass being a representation not only of each of her working days, but also symbolizes her limited time here in Tevat. So we know about Lisa as a character and why she is likely going to die somewhere along the lines. The question now is, when? When will we see the day that Lisa ends up dying off, if ever? I think that day is much sooner than people may think. Currently we're approaching version 2.4 and are exploring the last areas of Inazuma. Afterwards, it wouldn't be shocking to see our journey in Sumeru begin somewhere between versions 2.5 at earliest and 2.8 at latest respectively. With this journey, I'm expecting to either see Lisa show up or have her be mentioned throughout the story. She may even become one of the main characters in the story quest, as she's regarded to be a distinguished graduate from the region's academia, so it would only be natural for her to get involved. It is likely she will die or have a near fatal incident towards the end of our journey here. There is a chance that there are people she may be involved with or is aware of that may cause her to come over and warn the traveler ahead of time. These figures could likely be those like Dottore or figures of his stature. Even then, she herself might end up just inserting herself out of a feeling of necessity to either protect or help the traveler through their journey.
A vision may seem like a great tool, but one day, the power one accumulates always finds a way to turn back on you. Should such a day come for me, so long as you're around, Never mind.